What is up, guys? TopTierYugioh here, and today I just wanted to show you guys some test hands with the Sky Striker deck that I recently profiled on this channel. But I will be doing this test hand video a little bit differently in that I will be, of course, doing some game 1 test hands showing you guys how consistent the deck is and how powerful it is going second, how easy it is to break opponents' boards. But I also want to show you guys how the deck performs in games 2 and 3, and so I will be looking at some sided games. So I'm going to show you guys what I'm siding in and out in different matchups and how the test hands are going to look in those games as well. And now if that does sound interesting to you, be sure to stick around and watch the entire video. And if you do like it, be sure to like the video and give it a thumbs up. And if you want to see more, subscribe to the channel for more amazing content, because it truly does help out a lot and lets me know what type of videos that you guys would like to see. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and get into the test hands. Alright, so moving into this first hand, I'm just going to do a little bit more shuffling before opening up with the hand. So for this first hand, we're going to be starting with Effect Veiler, Gamma, Area 0, Widow Anchor, and then Shark Cannon. This is going to be our 5-card hand that we're starting with, and because this is a going second deck, this is going to be what we need to stop our opponents. And so we do have Gamma and Veiler, so we do have the best hand trap of the format as well as another really solid hand trap, and so we're probably going to be able to stop the opponent from whatever they're doing. And so let's say that we use Gamma on a needle fiber or something, so we'd special summon the Gamma would summon Driver out of the deck. And then maybe we have to stop something else with the Veiler. During the end of the turn, both the Gamma and the Driver will be banished. So let's say we're able to stop the opponent, and then from here it's like an even game state. So for our 6th card, or I guess our 4th card, we would draw into another copy of Gamma, which does suck because the Driver has already been banished. But at the same time, we at least do have more forms of disruption with the Shark Cannon and the Widow Anchor, as well as potential access to our engine with Area 0. And so really this hand depends on how the Area 0 resolves. So we would start by activating Area 0, very likely setting the Shark Cannon and then targeting it with Area 0. And we'd want to choose this over Widow Anchor, obviously, because Widow Anchor is a better defensive card. And I really wish that Gamma could be normal summoned here, because then this would be much better to destroy with Area 0. But so we set the card, activate Area 0, targeting our set Shark Cannon, and Area 0 would have Desires, Imperm, oh please be a Sky Striker monster, Rose. So we definitely take the Rose, and then shuffle these back into the deck. And then our set Shark Cannon will be sent to the graveyard. So this Rose really saved us here. So from here we would normal summon a Rose. We would link this into a Hayate. And then at this point it does depend on what the opponent maybe ends with. Like maybe they have some back row set, or you know, we'd have an idea of what they'd be playing, and it's difficult in this type of video to decide what the play would be. But I think in general that we do want to set up getting a follow-up for the next play, for the next turn, so we definitely would want to get access to Hornet drones. And so we'd either want to do that through Hayate dumping it and then adding it back with Kagari, or in phase searching it with Shizuku. Which one we do is kind of up in the air. We could also try to set up a multi-role play that would be very powerful right now, or we could try to just get Ray in the graveyard, add back our Shark Cannon, and use Shark Cannon Widow Anchor as defense. It really just depends on the matchup how we want to play this out, but we have so many different options, and that's one of the important things with Sky Strikers, and one of the things that make it so powerful right now is that you can deal with so many different matchups very well. So if we're playing against like Outlet, for example, then yeah, we want to Kagari back the Shark Cannon and then have this as defense because we could banish a Lord. Or if we're playing against, let's say, Adamanticators, then we'd want to ensure that we have enough defense, and for that I'd try to go for a second copy of Widow Anchor actually. And maybe we're playing against Invoked, to where we really don't need much more defense, like you just need to kind of stop the Alistair, and then from there it's kind of up in the air, but the engine becomes more important. Then yeah, multi-roll would be insane because we'd be able to outgrind them. And so depending on the matchup you're playing against, that's going to determine what the play is here. But we have a ton of different options, and we're able to at least stop the opponent and get into a game state where we do have options and we're able to act on it. And that's kind of the main thing about this deck that you want to keep in mind. You want to get to a neutral game state where you're able to play, and then from there outplay your opponent. So let's go ahead and look at the next test hand. Alright, test hand number 2. Hopefully we don't have to rely on area 0 to get to a monster this time, because that was kind of scary, a little spooky there. But let's go ahead and take a look at this second hand. So for this, we're going to have a Rose, Eagle Booster, Gamma, Imperm, and Widow Anchor. So this is going to be our 5-card hand. And this time, once again, we have 2 hand traps. We have Imperm and Gamma, so we have 2 of the best hand traps, as well as having a Sky Striker monster to start our plays with, so that's also going to be very good. So this is a pretty powerful hand. We have Widow Anchor to break a board with, and Eagle Booster, which is kind of dead going second in a lot of cases. It's usually better in the mid to late game, but it's not awful, you know. At least this can guarantee that our Kagaris, our Hayates, our Shizukus are going to resolve, and so it's not terrible. But, you know, it is what it is. So let's say we're going second against, you know, some random deck. We activate our Gamma, special summon that, also summon Driver out the deck. Oh, and another thing you definitely want to keep in mind as well is, in this type of hand, of course, you want to play around the interactions between Gamma and Imperm. So you would want to Imperm before you Gamma. I probably should have mentioned that, but if possible, you do want to Imperm before you Gamma, because if you Gamma first, it locks off your Imperm. And also, if you Gamma first, it opens you up to triple tack. Whereas in other cases, if you Imperm first, maybe you don't need to use the Gamma, and then your opponent doesn't triple tack you, because let's say they triple tack and decide not to take out the Gamma. So let's say we Gamma first, they activate triple tack, then they see that, okay, we can't use any of these cards, so they just take away the Rose, and now they just combo off and we don't have a starter. Like, that would be terrible. Or they take away the Imperm, so we have nothing to bait one of their negates with outside of the Widow Anchor. So we really don't want to open ourselves up to triple tack, and so with this hand, you definitely would want to use your Imperm first. Definitely keep that in mind. But then, of course, if they needed to do something else, we could Gamma that. But then in the end phase, it would be banished, and then we would draw a multi-roll for a turn. And so from here, the hand is actually pretty solid, because we have access to the engine, we have defense or a card to break a board, multi-roll to get our engine going even further, and then of course the Eagle Booster. And so we had the hand traps to stop the opponent in most cases, and then we also have the ability to play ourselves. And so this is exactly, once again, what we would want to open with in a Sky Striker hand. And so from here, we would just play the Rose, link off into a Hayate, go to battle phase and try to, you know, dump whatever we need. Again, we'd want to get a Hornet Drones for a follow-up play on the next turn. And then we already have the Widow Anchor for defense. We'd have the option of getting some other things as well, just depending on the matchup, whether we'd want to get a Shark or a second Widow or maybe an Afterburners. It just depends. But this is very similar to the last hand, so let's try another one that might be different. And I think I'll maybe do 1 or 2 more of these game 1 hands before getting into the sided stuff. But as you guys can see, it's pretty consistent. Like, we had very similar hands in games 1 and 2. Or, I shouldn't say games 1 and 2, but in the first 2 test hands. Like, we had multiple hand traps, ability to stop the opponent, as well as the ability to play on the following turn. So, that's exactly what we're looking for. Let's do one more final cut. So, for this hand, we have Desires, Veiler, Triple Tack, second Triple Tack, Shark Cannon. So this is our 5-card hand. We only have 1 hand trap, it being a Veiler, which is not an insanely good hand trap, so we likely still will be dealing with an opponent's board unless they didn't open very well themselves. And so this is a tricky situation here. So we'd probably Veiler something, and then for our 6th card, we would draw into a 3rd copy of Triple Tack. So we have triple tacks here. That's really bad, because Triple Tack is a hard once per turn. And so what we would have to do in this game is, I mean, hopefully we could bait and negate with a Shark Cannon. I mean, you probably don't, but I think we'd have to activate the Desires first and just see if they allow it to resolve. So activate Desires, we banish 10. Let's check out what we banished. So we banished the Ray, that kind of sucks. The only Eagle Booster, 2 Rays, that's actually pretty bad. but everything else is pretty fine. And then we would draw into copies of Imperm. If they allowed this to resolve, of course, we draw into Imperm, and then we draw into another Shark Cannon. So we'd have 2 Shark Cannons, 3 triple attacks, and an Imperm. That would be the hand. And if they did negate it, then we could triple attack and draw into the same thing, or we could triple attack, take one of their monsters to bait one of their negates, and just kind of depends on what we'd be trying to do. And also their board. But overall, this hand is not very good. Probably just bad shuffling on my part, or just bad luck. Sometimes you get hands like this. But yeah, we could try to negate something with Imperm, maybe bait some stuff with Shark Cannon. But this would be a tough hand to play out of for sure. What's the next card? Multi-roll, so this doesn't get us anywhere either. So yeah, this would be a tough game to win. So let's look at one more hand. I'm going to separate the triple attacks. That also kind of brings up one of the weaknesses with triple tactical talents, is that it doesn't allow you, like, triple attack can be used to go second to break boards, but it can't do it on its own. You need another card to bait negates, or another card to just to bait negates or something. And if you don't have that, then it's very difficult to use. And in multiples or in simplified game states, it can be very difficult. And when you compare that to something like Dark Ruler, which could be mained, or Forbidden Droplets, you don't really have those issues because you can proactively negate cards. But again, with triple attack, you cannot. And so that's one of the downsides of it. But I do still think it's an amazing card. So let's look at this last game 1 test hand. And I'm pretty sure it's going to be good, because this is the last one. So Area 0, Rose, Veiler, Imperm, and a second copy of Area 0. So this is our 5-card opening hand. And once again, we would want to try to use the Imperm first to, again, play around triple attack. That's a big one, because most of the combo decks are playing that. A lot of them are also playing Called by the Grave. Well, I shouldn't say most of them, but Dragon Link will sometimes play triple attack. Infernal Knights will play triple attack and or Called by the Grave. Adamanticators won't play either one of them because they have enough extenders and enough gas to not need them. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it for the big 3 combo decks. Then you have Eldritch, which kind of combos, but they generally won't play either. And then Invoked doesn't need them. Invoked will play triple attack and Called by the Grave, but they don't really need it. But in either case, Imperm first, Veiler second. Let's just say we use both of them. And then our 6th card would be a copy of Widowanker. So that's actually pretty solid. We do have, again, access to Rose. We have a way to still break the board if they have any other negates that they can put up. And then we have a Area 0 for extra access to the engine. And so if we don't need to use Widowanker, we could just Area 0, set the Widowanker, activate Area 0's effect targeting the Widowanker, and that would reveal Hornet Drones, which is really good, Mystic Mine, and then an Ash Blossom. So of course we take the Hornet Drones. This would destroy the Widowanker, and then from here we could go Rose, Kagari add it back, or use Hayate to continue our plays, get our engine going some more, Shizuku. So this would be a pretty good hand to where we have everything we want, and we'd be exactly where we want the game to be. We'd be able to set up multiple defenses, just in general a great hand. And so in 3 out of those 4 hands, we were able to stop the opponent from playing in most cases because we opened multiple hand traps, and then we also had access to our engine as well. And I think that's the best you can ask for in a lot of games, and a lot of decks can't deal with that. And so that's one of the great things about Sky Strikers. But let's take a look at what we can do in games 2 and 3. Alright, so moving into the side deck, this is what I'm currently siding for this Sky Striker deck. I've had a lot of success with it in testing. And so it's just 3 copies of There Can Only Be One, Solemn Judgment, Dark Ruler No More, Cosmic Cyclone, and then Nibiru. And so 3 copies of all 5 of those cards. It makes it very simple and easy to side in and out, and it covers most different matchups. And so I'm going to put the main deck on the screen as well so you guys can see what the entire list is and what the options are for siding in and out. And so for how I would generally side deck would be, of course, depending on whether or not I'm going first or second and what matchups they are, but because this is going second deck, let's say if I'm still going second, so if I lost game 1 and then I get to choose games 2, let's say I choose to go second game 2, what I would generally side in or out would be, I would side out the Pot of Desires as well as the Shark Cannon, because those are generally weaker going second, especially Shark Cannon, because it's like, what are you banishing from your opponent's grave against an established field? Like, it's usually not very good. You could even argue to side out more copies of Shark Cannon, but I do still think you want them in your deck just as engine pieces as well as cards that you can hit off of area 0. That can be very, very important. But at the same time, they're better things that you want in your main deck. Or I guess it's still your main deck, yeah, that you want in your sided main deck. And so I would side those 3 cards out, and then I would side in either the 3 copies of Nib or the 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More, depending on the matchup. And so if I was playing against a deck that could potentially play Smoke Grenade or rip a card out of my hand, I wouldn't want Dark Ruler No More, because if you're playing against Noble Knights and you side in Dark Ruler, they're going to rip it out of your hand. And so it doesn't make any sense. But you could play Nibiru, which they could play around, of course, but they also might not play around it. And so when they don't, Nib's going to be really good, because even if they play around it, they're going to have the Smoke Grenade. So it's better just to side something in that at least if they don't play around it, or if they don't have Gear Freed, then you're going to be able to Nib them, and it can really hurt at times. So I like that a lot in those matchups. So against Dragons or in Noble Knights, then I'll side in the Nibs. But then against a deck like Adamantipator's, Invoked, or if I'm playing against a Dragoon deck or a Winded deck, then Dark Rulers are obviously going to be better, because it can be your 6th card and still save you, and that's one of the benefits of Dark Ruler. And now the downside is that it doesn't deal with the monster itself. So if you're playing against Adamantipators and they end with a Savage Dragon that's equipped with a Destruction Sword, this isn't going to deal with that. But at the same time, it's better than having anything else in your main deck, and it's better than a Nib, because obviously if they have Guardian or Researcher, it's very easy to play through and or around Nib. So I definitely like Dark Ruler more in that matchup. Then if I'm going first, I would generally side in the Solemns and the There Can Be Only Be Ones. And so what I would side out is actually the Psy-Frame package, so the 3 copies of Gamma and the Driver. And I side those out because if you're going first, you're generally going to have a monster on board, and if you start with Ray, you will pretty much always have a monster on board, and therefore Gamma will never be live. And so I will usually side those out going first. And then the other cards that I think lose value going first are Mystic Mind and Triple Tactical Talents, and so I will side some number of those out as well. And so in a lot of games, especially against combo, I'll side out the Gammas, the Drivers, 2 copies of Mine, and then 3 copies of Triple Tactical Talents. So that's siding out 9 cards, and then I'll side in the 3 copies of Solemn, There Can Only Be One, and then Nibiru. And another thing I do like about Nib when going first is that you can set up for the Nib plus Rose play, because if you activate Nibiru while your opponent has something in the extra monster zone, it can actually trigger Rose's graveyard effect to summon itself back. And then if your opponent can't remove the Rose from board, you already have a starter card for your next turn. And that can be really helpful when grinding games out, especially against combo. So you might have like 3000 attack Nib, then Rose. Yeah, you can put a lot of pressure on your opponent like that. So I definitely like that even when going first. But it does, depend on the matchup. So if I was playing against like an Eldritch deck going first, then I would side in those Cosmic Cyclones instead of the Nibs, because this is going to deal with their out for There Can Be Only One, and that could be their Conquistador or something. So, or I guess you can't Conquistador against There Can Only Be One, so, but I still do like Cosmic more in that matchup, just for hitting their Golden Land traps. But with There Can Only Be One against Eldritch, they can always just use Lord. And then finally, if I'm playing against a control deck, what I would generally do is side out the 3 copies of Mystic Mind, and then just side in the 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. And you still can keep in the Gammas and Triple Tactical Talents. They're still decent in most control matchups. Like, even when you're playing against Guru, they're going to have Fiendish, they're going to be activating Guru, and so Triple Tac is going to be live. It's just not as good as when you're playing against, like, a combo deck or something. And same with the Gamma and the Driver. Like, they're still going to be activating monster effects, but they can definitely be fine if they're under Mystic Mind. So I usually will side that out. And if I do want to side out the Triple Tacs or the Gammas, then I would also just side in like There Can Only Be One maybe, or Solemn Judgment, stuff like that. So we definitely have the tools for what we're siding in and out. And so what I want to look at here is some going first hands. And so I'm going to side out once again the Solemns, side out the Gammas, the Drivers, 2 copies of Mine, and 3 Triple Tacs, and then side in the Solemns, There Can Only Be One, and then the Nibs. Then we're going to look at some test hands like that and what we would play when going first. Alright, so moving into some going first sided games, I sided out once again the 3 copies of Gamma, the Driver, all 3 copies of Triple Tactical Talent, and then 2 copies of Mystic Mind. All of these have been sided out, and then I sided in the 3 copies of Solemn Judgment, 3 copies of There Can Only Be One, and then 3 copies of Nibiru. And so let's see how these hands are going to look when going first. So I've already power shuffled once again, but we're going to do a few other shuffles just to further randomize the deck as always. But let's see how these hands look. So for the first hand, we have Imperm, Mystic Mine, the 1 copy of Mystic Mine. That sucks. I wanted to keep it in deck just so we'd have the option if the game goes longer to search it from a terraforming, then maybe use it like that, but it does suck to open with going first. Ray, 2nd copy of Imperm, and then There Can Only Be One. So this is not a bad hand. We at least have Ray, and we have multiple forms of disruption with the There Can Be Only One and the Imperms. And so really in this type of hand, all you can do is normal summon Ray, go into your copy of Shizuku, and then of course you'd want to set your Imperms and your There Can Only Be Ones, and really probably not both copies of Imperm, because you don't want to just lose to a Lightning Storm because you have nothing to stop that in this hand. So just maybe 1 Imperm, 1 There Can Only Be One, and then in the end phase search a follow-up with Shizuku. And so I really like searching Hornet Drones here. So it's Hornet Drones, and you would hope that the There Can Only Be One wins you the game, and in a lot of decks it will. Like if you're playing against Adamantimators, there's no outs to this. Warriors, there's no out to it. Dragons, no out to it. It really is just going to depend on if they draw that Lightning Storm or that Cosmic Cyclone or that evenly. Not even evenly actually, because then you just keep the There Can Only Be One. But yeah, they need that Lightning Storm or Cosmic, and probably Lightning Storm. And so it's going to be very difficult for them to deal with, and even if they do, you still have this Imperm, and so that's going to be pretty solid actually. So that's just something to keep in mind. Let's go ahead and look at the next test hand. And as you guys could see in that, the Striker engine itself doesn't really do much when going first, because all you can really do is Shizuku pass. And that's why this deck really prefers to go second, because the engine itself has limitations now. It isn't like before when we had Engage, or when you could play Foolish Burial Goods and Kangari stuff back. It just isn't as common now. So let's go ahead and look at this next test hand. So we open There Can Only Be One once again, Widow Anchor, Imperm, Reinforcements of the Army, and then Area 0. So this is a pretty good hand actually. So we could go for Rhoda, activate that, search for a copy of Ray, and we have Ray in Area 0. And on one hand, we could do the combo to where we activate Area 0, normal summon Ray, chainlink 1 Area 0, chainlink 2 Ray. But what you don't want to do here is lose to Gamma. And if the opponent Gammas the Ray, that would be huge actually. And we would still get to resolve the Area 0, because Area 0 does not have to send the card you target to the graveyard itself to resolve the effect. But at the same time, you want to have access to Shizuku. And so if you lose access to Ray and miss on Area 0, then you don't have access to your engine anymore, and that can be very problematic. And you could say that because we have these 3 other defensive cards, it would be okay. We maybe still win the game just based off of these, but it also really opens you up to Lightning Storm as well. And so you'd have to make that choice on how greedy you want to be with your Area 0 and your Ray. Like you could do that combo and lose to Gamma Lightning Storm, or maybe you just go Ray straight to Shizuku and then search with Shizuku, or maybe you Area 0 like your Imperm or something. You have a couple of different options, but like obviously the best case is your opponent has no hand traps, and you like do that, chain Ray, go into a Shizuku, Area 0 reveals, Solemn, Afterburners, and multi-roll. You add multi-roll, and then you're good. Like that would be best case scenario. This would actually be a really good scenario, but once again, it is not impervious, but it is susceptible to Gamma. You definitely want to keep that in mind, because I mean, I guess we do, even if you did get Gamma, in this case you'd have multi-roll, which could destroy Area 0, which could still get you access to another Ray, so it would be fine. But you have to consider like that as an option at least, or as a weakness and a threat to your play. So something just to keep in mind. But let's go ahead and look at another going first test hand, because once again, we'd be pretty set with this hand. Like we have the There Can Only Be One, multiple defense, we have access to our engine with Area 0 and multi-roll. So this would be a pretty good position to be in. It's just Lightning Storm, which is why I like siding in those Solemn Judgments, because Lightning Storm is the one card like that, and maybe evenly, that could really hurt what this deck can do. For this next test hand, we have, I drew two, but Solomon Ash, Imperm, Rhoda, and then Area 0 once again. So a very similar hand in the fact that we do have the Area 0 plus potentially Ray. So we would once again start by activating the Rhoda, using that to search a copy of Ray. Whoops. Then we would normal summon our copy of Ray, activate Area 0, and we could do the Area 0 Ray play here. And here at least we have the Solemn Judgment, so if our opponent does have Lightning Storm, at least we'd be able to negate it or an evenly or something like that. That does help and give us a little bit more confidence in my opinion. But you still have to be worried about Gamma here. Gamma is a big threat, because if they Gamma your board, you have no access to the rest of your engine unless the Area 0 hits. But let's try it. So Chainlink 1 Area 0, Chainlink 2 Ray. Ray will summon a copy of Shizuku, and an Area 0 effect, second copy of Ray, Solemn Judgment, and there can only be one, so of course we're going to add the Ray to our hand. So then from here we would set our copies of Imperm and Judgment, in phase Shizuku effect, and because we already have access to Ray for next turn, I think we'd want to get something to maybe break the opponent's board in case they are able to play through what we have. So I'd really want to get like a Shark Cannon or maybe even an Afterburners. That would be good as well. Or you could go for multi-roll to really get your engine going a little bit more. So we have a few different options here. It just depends on what you think is best really. But all of them are pretty good. But let's look at maybe some other hands. I know one of the comments on the deck profile was actually asking if I would do combos for Sky Strikers, but this is kind of the reason why I'm not, because as you can tell, Sky Strikers don't have combos. You just kind of let your Sky Striker engine do its thing. Like you try to stop your opponent or you break your opponent's board, and then you play your Sky Striker cards. There's not really combos to them, you just have to read the plays and choose the correct utility for the situation. But it isn't a combo deck, so that makes it kind of weird. So for this next hand we have Nibiru, then we have Pot of Desires, Reinforcements of the Army, Solemn Judgment, and then Ray. So this hand is actually a little bit tricky because with the Nib, I actually really do like having a Rose in graveyard. That way we could use the Nib-Rose interaction, but at the same time, you don't want to, because you can't do that same thing with a Ray, because if you have a Shizuku and then you Nibiru your opponent, then you lose your Sky Striker extra deck monster, you're not getting the Raise effect in the grave, and if you don't have a follow-up, it can be really, really bad. And so, on one hand, you could search a follow-up with Shizuku, but if that gets ashed, impermed, gamma'd, something like that, then it can really hurt. And so, it's tricky what the safest play here would be, because if we Rhoda for Rose, go Shizuku and Shizuku gets banished, or I'm sorry, gamma'd, then we don't get anything back, nor do we get a search, but at least we have the follow-up in the Ray. That would at least, yeah, having the two monsters really saves this hand, because it means we don't have to search a follow-up, and if something happens to the follow-up, we're actually going to be completely fine here. So I think what I would do in this hand is activate the Reinforcements of the Army to go for Rose, just to get it out of the deck and to protect it from the Desires that we're about to activate, because it would really suck if we banished Rose here. Next, I would activate the Pot of Desires. So for that, we're going to banish 10, draw 2. Let's see what we banish. So we banished a copy of Ray, 1 Shark Cannon, 2 Shark Cannons, Afterburner, 1 Area 0. So this is pretty fine. We didn't banish all of our copies of anything, so we're still going to be able to play just fine. And then we would draw into a second copy of Ray. That kind of sucks. And then a Mystic Mind, the one of, because this is going first, so that's also kind of bad. But from here, I think really we only have the Judgment and Nib as interruptions. So I would summon the, I guess we don't really need to do the Rose thing here, just because we have a follow-up anyways. It might be better to go for a Ray play, just because if they do break the board, at least we'd have something to try to defend ourselves with. Like, it kind of depends on how we want to play. Like, do we want to let the opponent deal with our extra deck monster, or are we gonna nib them first? I guess actually no, we probably nib them first, yeah. So we do start with Rose. I think that's the play, but it does telegraph that we have nib. So that's also the tricky thing about it. When you start with Rose, after rotating for it, they're gonna think, why didn't you rota for Ray? Oh, he must have nib. So it does give your opponent some information if they're a smart opponent. So you have to read your opponent here as well, because not everyone's gonna think this, but if you know your opponent maybe is like good, smart, or if they have played Striker, they're gonna know this. So from here, go for Shizuku, set the Judgment, end phase, Shizuku. You already have a follow-up play, so once again, I would not search for another follow-up, but rather something that's going to extend our engine or allow us to break their board. So Area 0 is a good option, Afterburner is a good option, Widow Anchor, a couple of different things that we could get. Probably not multi-roll here because we don't have anything else, nothing else in graveyard either, so not multi-roll this time. But yeah, Widow, Burners, or Area 0 would be my choices. And I think I actually like Afterburner or Widow Anchor the most, because Area 0, the only thing we have to really destroy is Ray, which is nice, but if it gets stopped, not that nice. Or if we actually keep our Shizuku on board, it wouldn't be good either. So I do actually like Afterburners or Widow Anchor. Probably Widow Anchor since it serves multiple purposes. So that would be the play in this hand. But alright guys, that's pretty much it for these Sky Striker test hands. I hope you guys enjoyed it and or maybe found something useful about it, and if you did, be sure to give the video a thumbs up as well as subscribe to the channel, because it does help out a lot and lets me know that you guys want to see potentially more Sky Striker content or more test hands. Just, you know, whatever you guys want to see, feel free to let me know down in the comments below. If you have any other questions, comments, concerns, suggestions, tips, tricks, if I made a misplay, let me know. But as always guys, thanks for watching and have an awesome day.